Okay, I'm getting back to Poily. I don't see her. Here, where's Poily?
I'll get there. But she's doing, my producer is working on the machine.
Okay, I see. Let me go
Mommy,
back
don't
to
mute
Poily.
Aunt Eva.
Here. Now I see Poily. Okay.
Ah,
Hi, Adina. Okay, guys, I'm going to mute you all for now, and then you can unmute if you have anything to say. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, now, Mom.
No. Well, you see, I happen to have been born in 1936. If you take off your shoes, you can figure out that's 84 years ago. And so the 83, but my math isn't so good, Sippy. When the war broke out, I was 2 years old. So too much from 2 years, I don't remember. We lived at the time in Germany, and my sister knows much more about that. And what I can tell from that time is basically through my sister, through my parents, very little, because my parents never talked. And that right now is a big problem for me. I have a lot of black holes, and I'm trying to tell my children things because I feel that it's not right to be left with so many black holes. Anyway, at age 2, we had been in Switzerland. My mother was a Swiss woman who married a Polish non-citizen man who lived in Düsseldorf, Germany. By doing that, she lost her Swiss citizenship, and he was stateless. He had he was not part of Germany. So anyway, we had all been in Switzerland for my mother's younger sister's wedding in November 1938. And Baruch Hashem, we made it back all together to Düsseldorf 2 weeks before Kristallnacht. Had we stayed, life would have been totally different, absolutely. There wouldn't have been a Rebecca, there wouldn't have been an Ellie. It would have been different. So anyway, we made it back to Germany, and we lived in a fairly nice neighborhood. And there was a German, not a lawyer, but a judge who lived in the apartment above us, correct, Eva? And he told my father, because they were good friends, that on this and this night he should take us all into the car. We had an Opel at that point, and we should just drive around and not come home. That was a good friend telling us what to do. And so we, during Kristallnacht and during where everything was broken and windows were shattered and etc., we were in a car going around Düsseldorf and not stopping. And my sister says she remembers seeing furniture being thrown out of the windows, and she saw, naturally, I was 1.5 years, I saw nothing. From then on, the next thing that I know, we were in Montreux. Montreux is in Switzerland. We somehow made it there. And we were there, and my father couldn't work because he was a foreigner. And so he went to the yeshiva and sat and learned, like a lot of people. And the rabbi, and then we decided that this can't go on. we got to go someplace where life would be normal. So we decided to go to Vichy, France. Vichy, France, in that time was, they thought was okay for the Jews, and they weren't with the Nazis. So my father went to the rabbi and said, we are leaving. And the rabbi said to him that go to a doctor and tell the doctor to give you a piece of paper that says that you have TB. And you might need it at one point or not, but at least you have it with you. So my father got this piece of paper from some doctor, and he put it in his pocket, and he never left with it.
Hello? I'm okay.
It's my mother. Mute her. She's the Galaxy. Adele is Galaxy. Mute
That's
her.
your mom? Okay.
Oh, hi, good to hear you.
Well, you know, can I call you back? I mean, I'm listening to something, okay? When are you coming?
Rebecca, mute my
I'm
mom.
proud of you. Okay, she's muted.
So my father had that in his pocket, and we, in the meantime, I don't really know the consequence of where we were. I remember being in this room for a night, in that room for a night, that we were going from place to place to place. This whole thing, you have to remember, is from a 3-4-year-old child. The war was not a war for grown-ups, the war was my age. So I remember going from place to place, and we were trying to be like a mile ahead of the Nazi army. And there are lots of little stories there, like we were in a town where I had the chicken pox, and my mother wrapped me up in a and we had a, what's it called, a air raid, and my mother wrapped me up in a blanket and took me down to the cellar, because that's where the safest place was. But everybody else in the building was there too, and they started yelling and screaming at my mother that she took a child with a sick child there. They're all going to get sick, so they threw her out of there. And everybody was down there, and my mother and I had to go upstairs. And I remember the front of the building had a big arch-like entrance, and we were told to stand under that arch. It's the safest place if a bomb hits there. And I still remember all these little black arrows falling from the sky that were bombs that exploded. And when I close my eyes, very often I see those explosions. One day during that time, and I don't understand it, my parents put me in kindergarten, and my father took me every day and left me there. And one day I forgot my gas mask, and he left me there, and they wouldn't take me in with the gas mask, without the gas mask. And I was 3.5 years old. And but they told me to go home. And I remember walking home petrified. Again, you see, the war was not, it was all from a child's point of view.
Maybe in a little while we'll open the microphone if Eva would like to say something from her perspective.
Okay. That would be very good. So I remember walking home there to that apartment. Under the kitchen table, I had a doll that my mother made out of a sock. That was my only toy. And I remember my parents bought dishes that my mother hated. Every time she made a cup of coffee in it, you know, it's these little things that you don't really hear when you hear war stories. But this is what bothered me, because my mother was so upset with those dishes. I see them in front of me, and I really was just a little one. Anyway, then we went, and then it was no good there anymore, and we went to the, during that time, that's my sister's story at this point. My parents made money by sewing buttons onto the uniforms, and they got like 10 cents per button or something like that. And my poor sister to this day is upset about the buttons that she made for some poor soldier. Anyway, what else? Then we went to another town and another town and another town, and we finally wound up in Chamonix. And in Chamonix, we were in a pretty nice, to me, it was a nice apartment in a house with a garden with tomatoes in the garden and berries. And I had a friend there, and I went to school, but it was the first time I was called Juif. I was walking on the street, and from the other side, somebody yelled at me, Juif. And it was frightening. And I mean, at this point, I was 4. It was 1940, 41. And I knew that that was not a good thing. Then my parents were told that when the moon is full, there's going to be a problem, that the Jews are going to be picked up. And we were sort of waiting for it, but you just continued living. And I remember coming home from kindergarten, and I had made a very beautiful, you know, one of these cards where you make you sew threads, and you make I made a butterfly, and my mother said, "Oh, what a beautiful butterfly," and she hung it over her bed. And that very night, there was a knocking that is still in my head from the army, and they collected us. And you know something? My mother did not take that butterfly. I was so upset that my mother did not take that painting. Again, a child is a child is a child. And from then on, my parents were very, very smart, and I give them a lot of credit. My mother was always upset, and my father would follow in her direction what she felt had to be done next. And they had made arrangements, how, where, what, I have no idea, with a man who was with the English army, who was near Chamonix, and what his business was to pick up the pilots whose plane crashed, and they would go down with a parachute, and he was the one who would pick up the parachutes and the people, and that was why he was there. And on the side, he made quite a bit of money by taking people across the Alps into Switzerland. He naturally knew the forest very well, because from looking for the pilots, he learned about it. So somehow my parents figured out to get to him, and had made up with him to take us over the Alps. And my mother put us with friends the night of the night when the gendarmes came to pick us up, they were not interested in children. They were interested in working people. It wasn't a concentration camp. It was what they called lager, a work camp. And so my father went with them. My mother went someplace else. My mother took us to some friends. It was a holy mess of a night. And we stayed with these people for 3 days, and my father appeared. Don't know how, where, and what. I know he hurt his leg. He jumped. He showed the letter from the doctor that he had TB to the people who picked him up. And since they were interested in healthy people who could work, they put him in the last carriage of the train in order, where there were a lot of sick people and where they didn't have a lot of people guarding them. And somehow, because of this letter, he was able to escape. So this is quite.
He jumped off the train and hurt his legs.
Yeah, he jumped.
It never healed his whole life.
Yeah. So, but it saved the whole family, this letter, really. You never know from where something comes to help. It's just, I'm jumping ahead. After the war, when we came to Switzerland, we went to this rabbi, and my father wanted an aliyah. And this rabbi said to my father, I cannot give you an aliyah, because my father begged. He hadn't been in shul for 6 years. And this rabbi said, you can't afford an aliyah. You can't give us money. So, and I remember how upset my father was with that. However, to his dying day, my father sent a check every year to the Monterey, to this rabbi. Anyway, back to, so we were by these people, and my father showed up, and it was, I think he showed up on a Shabbos morning, and he told my sister and me to put on 3 dresses, one on top of the other, and 3 underwear and 3 sweaters. We walked around like, and without a bag and without a pocketbook, we walked out of the house and onto a train, and Papa, Shabbos on a train. And we took that train to the very, very last stop towards Switzerland. And from there, I don't know how we got to the man who took us over the Alps, but we got to him. And
where was your mother during this time?
She was already in Switzerland. She had gone first and made the way there. So this was only my father, my sister, and I, and this man, the 4 of us. And I don't really remember his face. I remember he wore a brown pair of pants.
You were looking from behind at his legs because you were very little.
I was, there was a very heavy rope around me, and I was attached to my father. Now, my father is not a sports person. That's about the least I can say. But he had height sickness very, very badly, and vertigo, and I was attached to my father with a heavy rope, and my father was attached to Eva, who was attached to the guide, and that's how we walked. And we walked, really, it was cliffs. I remember the cliffs going down, and there are spots that I remember, and there are spots that I don't remember. But I remember one spot where it just went straight down. And then we got to the top, and there it was very green and just a field of grass set on, and we walked and walked. Now there was in America was this underground for the slaves, and there was something like that this British guy had. So we went from one farmer to another, and at night we slept in haystacks. I remember it took 4 days, I think. We had no food. We had sugar cubes that we ate constantly. On sugar, you don't feel hungry, and you don't have to carry much. I remember being in one hayloft, and the farmer bought me a cup of hot chocolate. That hot chocolate was unbelievable. It was like, I mean, gold. For me, it was the biggest present I ever had or will have. What else? Anyway, so then we walked and walked and walked. At one point, we saw the enemy, and we all had to lie flat on the grass. And I mean, I'm 4.5 at this point. How do you tell a kid not to cry? But I remember that, and then they went away, and we kept walking. And then on the 4th day or 5th day, I don't know which, the guide said, "You see that mountain there? From here on, he was not allowed to walk." So he left us there all alone, and he told us to walk just towards there, and eventually we'll be in Switzerland. And we did it. And Baruch Hashem, we made it. And
Maybe we'll take a pause here and see if Eva has anything to add to this. Eva, would you like to say anything?
Well, my story is very different. I remember it from my point of view. You know, I was then, I mean, I'm 7 years older than Poili, or 6.5 years older. And a lot of things that I remember were very different. Similar, but different. I saw it so differently. So I can tell you, I don't know where to begin even.
I'd love to.
What?
I'd love to hear it.
Well, what I remember is that first of all, we were home Kristallnacht. That's what I definitely remember. And we had information which we didn't know, I mean, that I don't know about. And we were thrown down the stairs. And our furniture was thrown out. And then we went into the car, the Opel, the gray Opel that you mentioned. And we drove around the city, drove around, and then we saw all these other you know, other furniture sticking out the window that they had thrown out. But I remember very much, you know, being thrown down the stairs at Kristallnacht.
I would imagine you are right. Yeah, I'm sure you are more right than me.
You know, and we never went back. We went to somebody that I think, I mean, a friend of Papi's, I mean, who worked for Papi at one point, and we went there and they took us in. And then we went on, how we went on the train to Switzerland, I don't remember. As you said, Papi, nobody ever spoke anything. And then we wound up actually in Zurich on the train. And in Zurich, we couldn't stay. They threw us out. We went to France.
And when was Montreux?
And then from there, we went to Epinal.
Yeah.
The first stop was Epinal. was a town near the French-Swiss border.
Where the train was hit with the bomb, the train we were on.
The train, right. From there, we took the train that we were on, right? And you know something? We got out of the train, like for everybody else. I mean, these are certain things that I remember, right? We got out of the train and we started walking towards houses, and we happened to hit, can you understand this? We hit a house and they took us in, and the person who took us in, because my mother spoke German to him. And he was there studying German, and she promised she'll teach him German. When the Nazis will come, he'll know German.
Yeah.
I remember reviewing this with Mommy.
Oh, yes.
Can you imagine this?
Yeah, I remember that you stood by the window there looking out and seeing. This was
they were looking out and they were passing.
Cattle train. This was not a train, the first class.
No.
We were in a cattle train.
That was later.
That was later?
No, we were in a cattle train after that. Then when we were at this teacher who was studying German and who took us in because of the German,
because he was
the town was being taken over by the Nazis. They came through. And we stood at the window watching all these, the Panzer, what are they called in English? The
Panzer.
Panzer.
What you call
the Pumas.
Panzer.
No, it's like a tank.
Tanks.
Panzer tanks.
The tank, right, passing by. The army was passing through this town, taking over the town. And we were standing at the window watching this. How we left, then we went on the train that was bombed with everybody else. That train was,
The front of the train was bombed, and we were okay. But
right.
And you were in the back of the train.
The back of the
But it's just, we have so many stories. The only people who survived are the ones that have stories.
Yes.
The ones, the others didn't make it. And that's just how it was.
And we went from place to place. I mean, we never we never stayed anywhere.
Too long, right?
Right.
And then we made it from there on a, like you said, under the hay. We were on a whatever it was, with a horse-drawn car, whatever,
Hay, right.
and it was full of hay, and we were under the hay, and he took us over towards the border, towards the Swiss border, and then we got to Montreux.
Neither of you mentioned the scarf, which was part of my childhood growing up.
The what?
The scarf.
My mother lost the scarf. Now, think of Sound of Music, that big white thing. And my mother lost it.
I don't have that at all. I have no recollection of Mama's music.
A green, I see it in front of me. And we were walking, it must have been 5 days afterwards. And there was a scarf on the floor.
You had no idea where she was and if she had made it?
Oh, yeah, sure, the scarf. No, that wasn't the scarf. No.
Was a scarf.
That was something else. No, I have no scarf at all in my recollection.
A long scarf with a holes all over the place.
No, I have none whatsoever.
Okay.
That's not part of me.
And then we made it to Switzerland, and we were coming down.
And we stayed at the Bochco Yeshiva. I mean, we stayed in Montreux, where the Bochco Yeshiva. Bochco, by the way, has a yeshiva now in Yerushalayim.
Oh, yes? With the
Great-grandfather.
great-grandfather.
That must have been his great-grandfather, right?
Yeah.
There's a yeshiva, Bochco Yeshiva is in Yerushalayim.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so we got to this mountain.
Wait,
going-
1 second, Mom. The Zoom's gonna time out. I'm gonna send the link again if we time out.
No, we're sending it on the chat, so it'll be easier for everyone.
Wait a minute, I need Vanessa. I don't know anything about this. I can't do
Okay,
anything
so
about
the meeting's gonna end in a
Vanessa,
few minutes, and
SOS.
here's the invitation for the next one in the chat.
Does everyone see it?
You sending the Zoom again
you see
because
it.
this,
You
I don't know
can't
why.
click on it. You can't click on it.
You can't click on it.
Why can't
Do you understand that?
Just copy and paste.
Copy and paste. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah. Where are you going to send it, Lisa?
Well, back to them.
I'll send it. Oh, how do I send it? Oh.
Rebecca, should we go there now?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch over now.
Did everyone get it?
Did you get the links? Give me.
Can you see me? Yeah, I'm there. I see Poily.
We close this meeting?
I'll be in. I'll be okay.
It's a different link.
It's scheduled in 12 minutes, though. It doesn't matter, you can start whenever.
Yeah, you can start early.
Well, let me.
This is very
Because you got out
confusing.
of the old one.
Ronit, it's a different link.
It's the link that's in the chat. You can send it to him on WhatsApp.
Yeah, we'll send it.
I think it's easier to just send it on WhatsApp.
Okay, but not everyone here.
Is it the same one?
No. Boma,
Yes,
I remember you telling that you walked in the snow.
Over the mountains, yes.
at one point snow, but a lot of, it was different depending on how high you
I
were.
know.
The mountain,
Because
was-
I remember you telling about
So
seeing
Jared, if we,
people, a
in
couple
order for us to
frozen.
send the link, we have to go out of this one, otherwise we can't start the new meeting. Okay, so hold your thought and
Go into the
everybody log out and